Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to Firstpost America. We're live in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. And today we've got the latest on the ongoing war in Ukraine, as well as ongoing tensions between Washington and Caracas. But of course, like every day, we begin with the latest headlines here. President Donald Trump says the U.S. has lost India and Russia to China. His comments come days after the Indian Prime Minister, the Russian President, and the Chinese President met at the SCO summit in Tianjin. South Korea says U.S. immigration authorities have detained hundreds of South Koreans during a major raid on a battery plant in Georgia. Seoul is urging Washington not to infringe on the legitimate rights of its citizens. In India, Mumbai police are on high alert after receiving a bomb threat via its official WhatsApp number, reportedly from terrorists from Pakistan. The police say the threat message claimed that multiple bombs have been placed in vehicles across the city. Finland says it will sign a French-Saudi declaration on a two-state solution between Israelis and Palestinians, but stopped short of announcing a date for recognizing Palestinian statehood. And U.S.-based artificial intelligence giant Anthropic says it will no longer sell its tools to Chinese-owned companies and groups based overseas, citing national security risk. We begin with the latest developments in the Russia-Ukraine war. President Donald Trump said on Thursday that he would soon be speaking to Russian President Vladimir Putin following his earlier calls with Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky and other European leaders. At a dinner hosted for major tech CEOs at the White House, the president told reporters he thought settling the Ukraine war would have been the easiest when he took office. However, he added it has proven to be one of the most difficult. Take a listen.
I settled 7 wars. The one that I thought would be maybe one of the easiest. You know that feeling? You think one thing is going to be easier, turns out to be a little bit tougher. But the one that I thought would be an easier one because of my relationship with President Putin and with Ukraine and everything else, I thought it would be the Russia-Ukraine disaster where...
The comments came as European leaders met in Paris to discuss security guarantees for Ukraine. Now, reports suggest growing frustration in Western nations over what leaders say is Putin's unwillingness to reach a deal. On Thursday, French President Emmanuel Macron announced that over 24 countries have committed to providing troops as part of a force in Ukraine after a peace accord with Russia, aiming to deter any future attacks.
We have today 26 countries that have formally committed, with several others to clarify their position, but 26 countries committed to deploy as a reassurance force troops in Ukraine or to be present on the ground, at sea, in air, in order to bring this reassurance to the Ukrainian territory and to Ukraine the day after a ceasefire or peace.
The Kremlin said on Friday that talks with President Trump could be arranged quickly if necessary, but it rejected the idea of Western security guarantees for Kyiv. Russian President Vladimir Putin also said on Friday that any Western troops deployed to Ukraine would be legitimate targets for Moscow to attack.
Regarding potential foreign military contingents in Ukraine, it is one of the root causes behind drawing Ukraine into NATO. Therefore, if some troops appear there, especially now, during military operations, we proceed from the fact that these will be legitimate targets for destruction. And if decisions are reached that lead to peace, to long-term peace, then I simply do not see any sense in their presence on the territory of Ukraine. Full stop. Should such agreements be achieved, let no one doubt that Russia will implement them in full.
Moscow has long said one of its goals in Ukraine was to prevent NATO from admitting Kyiv and stationing forces there, highlighting the gap between Russia's position and that of Ukraine and its Western allies. On Friday, Putin once again reiterated that he was ready to meet Ukraine's Zelensky if the Ukrainian president came to Moscow. He added, however, that previous proposals to hold a meeting with Zelensky had included excessive demands and stressed again that the Russian capital would be the most appropriate location.
I've said I'm ready. Please come. We will absolutely ensure working conditions and safety 100% guarantee. But when they tell us, we want to meet with you, but you must travel to such and such location, I believe these are simply excessive demands directed at us. I repeat, if anyone genuinely wishes to meet with us, we are ready. The best place for this is the capital of the Russian Federation, hero city of Moscow.
Meanwhile, back in Washington, the White House reportedly said President Trump urged European countries to apply more economic pressure on China over its alleged support for Russia. Now, speaking by video conference with European leaders, Trump also allegedly said Europe must stop purchasing Russian oil. China, however, hit back on Friday, noting it firmly opposed calls to impose economic pressure on Beijing.
我们坚决反对
We firmly oppose the practice of constantly dragging China into the matter of the war, and we strongly oppose the imposition of so-called economic pressure on China.
动辄拿中国说事儿。
Now, despite the diplomatic efforts, the conflict rages on. In fact, a Russian strike on a village in Ukraine's Kyiv region reportedly killed 3 people late on Thursday. Russia's position is only growing stronger as efforts at finding peace continue to drag on, suggesting peace may only be achieved on Putin's timetable, not Europe's, and certainly not America's. And now turning to South America, where friction between the United States and Venezuela is reaching new heights. On Thursday, the Pentagon said 2 armed Venezuelan F-16 fighter jets flew close to a U.S. Navy guided missile destroyer in the southern Caribbean Sea. The Pentagon described the move as highly provocative and an attempt to disrupt Washington's ongoing counter-narcotics and counter-terrorism operations in the region. According to a U.S. defense official, the warship did not engage as the jets buzzed overhead. However, the Defense Department warned Caracas against any further escalation, declaring on X, the cartel running Venezuela is strongly advised to not pursue any further effort to obstruct, deter, or interfere. Now, the incident comes just 2 days after U.S. forces carried out a deadly strike on a speedboat in the Caribbean that Washington claimed was tied to Venezuela's Tren de Aragua gang.
Venezuela's been a very bad actor. They've been, as you know, they've been sending millions of people into our country, many of them Tren de Aragua, some of the worst gangs, some of the worst people anywhere in the world in terms of gangs. And we had some in Washington, D.C. We took care of them very quickly, but they're out of here. They've gone. But Venezuela's been very bad, both in terms of drugs and sending some of the worst criminals anywhere in the world into our country.
Caracas denounced the strike as an extrajudicial killing, accusing the United States of murdering civilians without due process.
Today, the imperialism is launching a new attack. It is not the first, nor will it be the last. It is just another attack, and Venezuela stands firm. And I say to you, Venezuela will continue standing with serenity, firmly and strong faith in victory and in peace.
Now, U.S. national security officials declared that military operations against cartels would continue even as questions about the deadly strike on a vessel from Venezuela remains unanswered.
And it'll happen again. Maybe it's happening right now. I don't know. But the point is, the President of the United States is going to wage war on narco-terrorist organizations. This one was operating in international waters, headed towards the United States to flood our country with poison.
In remarks during a trip to Latin America, Secretary Rubio defended the new approach. Speaking in Quito alongside Ecuador's foreign minister, he declared, quote, "Now they're going to help us find these people and blow them up if that's what it takes."
We are allocating $13.5 million from the Department of State to combat drugs and crime, to support those efforts. On top of that, we are also working now to provide $6 million for drones. Now we can provide information without any limitation on how the government of Ecuador wants to use it. If it's with a terrorist group, they are terrorists, and we can help them confront those terrorist groups.
Now, the U.S. has deployed several warships and surveillance planes to the region in recent weeks. And reports say President Trump signed a classified directive last month instructing the military to use force against certain Latin American drug cartels designated as terrorist organizations. Meanwhile, Venezuelan state media avoided covering the aerial encounter. Instead, broadcasts focused on President Nicolas Maduro's announcement of the first nationwide activation of the national militia. President Maduro said new volunteers have recently joined, and units now span the entire country from north to south, from east to west, down to the last community.
We are not idiots. We never have been, and we never will be. We are facing extremist forces from the north, Nazi extremists, and humanity must know this. Venezuela is on the front line of the fight for humanity, for the right to peace.
President Maduro has repeatedly warned that Washington's military buildup in the Caribbean is part of a broader effort to force regime change. He vowed that if Venezuela is attacked, the country would mobilize all forces and become a republic in arms. The Venezuelan leader claims the military counts around 300 to 400,000 active members, backed by more than 8 million reservists. So as tensions continue to intensify, the U.S. continues to accuse the Venezuelan leader of ties to international drug trafficking cartels. Last month, Washington even doubled its reward to $50 million for information leading to Maduro's arrest. For now, the skies above the Caribbean remain tense, with warships below and fighter jets overhead. And now to Capitol Hill, where Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. faced the Senate Finance Committee on Thursday in what turned into a tense and combative hearing that stretched for more than 3 hours. The hearing, which was meant to outline his agenda to make America healthy again, quickly veered into heated exchanges over COVID vaccines, the dismissal of the director of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and his overall stance on public health policy. Lawmakers pressed Kennedy on his record, with Democrats accusing him of restricting Americans' access to COVID-19 vaccines and Republicans questioning the contradictions in his policies. One Democratic senator even called him out for not knowing how many Americans died from COVID-19 during the pandemic.
To just, again, some basic facts. Do you accept the fact that 1 million Americans died from COVID?
I don't know how many died.
You're the Secretary of Health and Human Services. You don't have any idea how many Americans died from COVID?
I don't think anybody knows that, because there was so much data chaos coming out of the CDC, and there was so many perverse incentives. And these are modeled.
You don't know the answer of how many Americans died from COVID. This is the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Do you think the vaccine did anything to prevent additional deaths?
Again, I would like to see the data and talk about the data.
You have had this job for 8 months, and you don't know the data about whether the vaccine saved lives?
Another Democratic senator demanded to know why Kennedy acted behind closed doors to limit vaccine access for healthy children and adults, citing the removal of shots previously available to millions. Kennedy shot back, angrily accusing her of just making stuff up, while insisting drug makers had failed to provide clear evidence that vaccines benefited those groups.
When have you produced the data that you relied on and that this FDA relied on to change those parameters? You did it behind closed doors.
No, the data is all public.
Now parents who decide that they do want their children to have
You're just making stuff up, Senator.
I'm not
You're
making
just
stuff
making stuff up.
You know, sometimes when you make an accusation, it's kind of a confession, Mr. Kennedy.
At the same time, Republican Senator Bill Cassidy, himself a doctor, raised concerns over Kennedy's long record of vaccine skepticism. He accused the health secretary of undermining science by stacking the CDC's advisory committee with members who previously testified against pharmaceutical companies in vaccine lawsuits. Last week, Kennedy fired the CDC director, Susan Monores, less than a month after she was confirmed to her position, and is now mounting a legal challenge, a case challenging her removal. Cassidy ended his exchange with a blunt charge that Kennedy was effectively denying people vaccines.
As lead attorney for the Children's Health Defense, you engaged in multiple lawsuits attempting to restrict access to the COVID vaccine. Again, it surprises me that you think so highly of Operation Warp Speed when, as an attorney, you attempted to restrict access.
The Trump appointee repeatedly argued that unsorted COVID data left over from the Biden administration made it impossible to know how many lives vaccines had in fact saved, though he later conceded that the shots had indeed saved quite a few lives. The But this did little to calm his critics, who accused him of making decisions that weaken the nation's ability to fight disease, especially after firing the CDC director and dismantling an independent vaccine panel. Now, throughout the hearing, RFK Jr. stood his ground, insisting his leadership was rooted in transparency and science, free from politics. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump, speaking to reporters after the hearing, praised Kennedy as a very good person and acknowledged that some of his beliefs are, in fact, outside the medical mainstream.
Get to watch the hearings today, but he's a very good person. And he means very well, and he's got some little different ideas. I guarantee a lot of the people at this table like RFK Jr., and I do. But he's got a different take, and we want to listen to all of those takes. But I heard he did very well today. But it's not your standard. It's not your standard talk, I would say, and that has to do with medical and vaccines. But if you look at what's going on in the world with health, and look at this country also with regard to health, I like the fact that he's different.
Now, the sparring came amid emerging evidence of broad support for childhood vaccines nationwide, even among voters who supported President Donald Trump. And according to CDC data, the United States has recorded more than 1.2 million COVID-19 deaths. And now, with fresh concerns over who controls the nation's vaccination policy, the hearing left many increasingly concerned that Robert Kennedy Jr. could be steering the country into uncharted and very dangerous territory. 3 lives were lost in a tragic crash on August 12th in Florida, and one community now finds itself under intense scrutiny. The incident involved Sikh truck driver Harjinder Singh, and its impact reaches far beyond the families directly affected. Sikh drivers, who play a key role in keeping America's freight moving, are now facing harassment, online hatred, and questions about their place on the nation's highways, all stemming from a single devastating incident. Here's the story with more.
In California, members of the Sikh trucking community say they have been left reeling after a deadly crash in Florida involving one of their own. On August 12th, truck driver Harjinder Singh made a U-turn on the Florida Turnpike. Authorities say the maneuver caused a collision that killed 3 people. Singh now faces charges of manslaughter and vehicular homicide. He is being held without bond in Florida. But the case has triggered national debates on immigration and religious freedom. It has also sparked online hatred against Sikhs, a community that plays a key role in America's trucking industry. Sikhs reportedly make up around 40% of the U.S. trucking workforce, and the impact has been felt far beyond one family.
So a large population of the truck community is Sikh truckers. And so when an accident like this occurs, it doesn't affect just one family, it affects the entire community.
Estimates of the U.S. Sikh population reportedly range as high as 750,000, with the largest concentration in California. Many work in the trucking industry and related businesses, including restaurants and trucking schools along major routes. But since the crash, many Sikh drivers say they have faced a wave of hostility and been unfairly singled out.
A lot of people are throwing hate for no reason at the community just because we wear the turban, and they have been victimizing the turban at the time, and which is not right. It was a human error.
Since the accident, drivers have allegedly been targeted with eggs and water bottles at truck stops in states including Oklahoma and Arkansas. That hostility has even spilled into the streets. In one instance, at a solidarity event in California, racial slurs were shouted from a passing car.
We had a communal day of solidarity where we invited lots of community leaders and just community in general. And unfortunately, even during that protest, a car had driven by and pulled down their window and yelled out racial slurs as we were there to support the community.
And the community believes one of the main drivers of this backlash is misinformation. Others in the Sikh trucking industry say the crash is being used to scapegoat them in the country's bitter fight over immigration.
We're really concerned about the safety of our drivers. There's fear in the community about the misinformation, about being targeted because you wear a turban.
Beyond the community, Singh's case has also become a political flashpoint, deepening divisions between state and federal authorities. The Trump administration and Florida officials have clashed with California over how Singh obtained a work permit and driver's license. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis even dispatched his deputy to secure Singh's extradition. California responded by pointing out that Singh had entered the country illegally during Donald Trump's first tenure in 2018. In the wake of the crash, the U.S. government also announced a pause on work visas for foreign truck drivers. Amid these political disputes, advocates say their priority remains ensuring Singh receives a fair trial and that his religious rights are protected while he is in custody.
We are advocating for Harjinder Singh. His family contacted us and we wanted to ensure that he's getting a fair and just trial, and also that his religious freedoms are, protected and observed, and he's able to.
Support has also spilled onto the internet, with petitions circulating online calling for Singh to be given a fair trial. But in the end, for America's Sikh truckers, the crash has left a lasting mark. The case is no longer just about one truck driver. It has become about defending a community that keeps much of America's freight moving every day.
And finally, what happens when your very own name becomes your biggest enemy? That's the bizarre reality for an Indiana lawyer named Mark S. Zuckerberg. He's not the billionaire CEO of Meta, but a man who has spent years battling mistaken identity, online takedowns, and a flood of angry calls meant for the tech titan. His story is part comedy, part chaos, and now it's heading straight into a courtroom showdown. This isn't just a legal dispute, it's a battle over identity, reputation, and survival in a world where algorithms don't always understand the human side of a name. Our final report brings you more.
In the courtroom of absurdity, a bizarre battle is brewing. Because Mark Zuckerberg has sued Meta. Yes, you heard that right. A bankruptcy lawyer from Indiana, who just happens to share the same name, has taken the Silicon Valley tech titan and Meta's billionaire founder to court. And his problem? Facebook keeps treating him like a fraud for being himself. For nearly a decade, the lawyer Mark Steven Zuckerberg has been locked in an identity crisis with the platform built by Mark Zuckerberg. His commercial page on Facebook, where he advertises his legal practice, has been taken down 5 times in 8 years. Each time, Meta's automated system flagged him for impersonation. But he says he is not impersonating Mark Zuckerberg. He is Mark Zuckerberg.
I'm Mark Steven, and he's Mark Elliott. It's not funny. Not when they take my money. This really pissed me off.
And here's where the story gets even stranger. The attorney points out that he has been practicing law since the Meta CEO was just 3 years old. Yet he is the one paying the price. Over $11,000 spent on ads for a page that keeps getting suspended. In frustration, he has even written to Meta several times.
Using a false name, which I've had way longer than he has. I've got better things to do than sue Facebook. They have more money and more lawyers and more resources than I do. I'd rather not pick a fight with them, but I don't know how else to make them stop.
But the comedy quickly turns into chaos. The lawyer says his name has haunted him for years. He even has a website just to explain the mix-ups. He says he can't make restaurant reservations without people thinking it's a prank call. Once, a limo driver held up a sign for Mark Zuckerberg, which drew a crowd expecting the Meta CEO.
I can't use my name when making reservations or conducting business as people assume I'm a prank caller and hang up. While speaking in Las Vegas, a limo driver was waiting for me at the bottom of the escalator with a sign for Mark Zuckerberg, causing chaos as a large, disappointed crowd had been waiting.
He gets mistaken phone calls, angry demands for Facebook tech support, and worse, even death threats. Packages and letters keep arriving at his office, filled with ideas on how to fix Facebook. And yet, through the absurdity, there is real frustration. He has been sued by mistake, booted from apps, and forced to hand over his birth certificate, licenses, and credit cards just to prove that he exists. The list is long. 23 bullet points to be precise. Meta says it knows there are more than one Mark Zuckerberg in the world and insists it is trying to solve this issue. But the lawyer is not waiting around. He has now taken his namesake to court, determined to clear his identity and keep his business running. And while this sounds like a one-of-a-kind oddity, it is really not. People have landed in trouble for sharing the same name as a celebrity before. Just ask Katy Perry, not the pop star, but the Australian fashion designer who spent years battling the singer Katy Perry in court over rights to her own name. So, where does this leave the Indiana attorney? He jokes that at least when you Google Mark Zuckerberg bankruptcy, he shows up first.
I don't wish Mark E. Zuckerberg any ill will at all. I hope the best for him, but let me tell you this, I will rule the search for Mark Zuckerberg bankruptcy. And if he does fall upon difficult financial times and happens to be in Indiana, I will gladly handle his case in honor of our eponymy.
But with the courtroom showdown beginning, the lawyer's life remains caught between comedy and calamity. The stage is now set for a courtroom clash unlike any other. Two men, one name, the billionaire who built Facebook and the lawyer who keeps getting erased from it. A battle where identity is the evidence and existence itself is on trial. Because when Mark Zuckerberg takes on Mark Zuckerberg, only one can truly like the final verdict.
That's going to do it for us today. We certainly thank all of you for tuning in, not just today, but every day. We hope you have a great weekend, and we look forward to seeing you right back here again next week.